Donald Trump has just won the presidency again in 2024. But what could this mean for energy in the US and the rest of the world?
We have more liquid gold than any country in the world.
Today, we are diving into Trump's track record on energy and the policy moves that could shake up the global markets. And if you think back to Trump's first term and even in his most recent campaign, you might remember the bold slogan, "Drill, baby, drill." That wasn't just a catchphrase, it symbolizes a shift in US energy policies that aims to make the country a dominant player on the world stage. And now, with Trump back in the Oval Office, that vision could be a reality once again. So, real quick, would appreciate it if you like this video and subscribe to the channel, and also click the notification bell so you won't miss out on global economic dynamics that could actually affect the money in your pocket. Under Trump's previous leadership, the US became one of the world's largest oil producers, if not the largest oil producer and natural gas by 2018, even surpassing Saudi Arabia and Russia. According to the US Energy Information Administration, oil production grew by over 30% from 2016 to 2020, and natural gas production rose by nearly 20%. With Trump back in power, well, it's likely to double down on these policies. Trump's approach to energy independence wasn't just about increasing the US production, it was a strategic move to reduce the reliance on foreign oil and position America as an energy powerhouse. I'm getting to why it's relevant to you even if you are not American. Just stick with me for a little bit. Trump actually lifted restrictions on oil drilling, approved major pipeline projects, and scaled back on environmental regulation, all in an effort to boost the US energy production. With Trump back in the office, we can expect a return to these aggressive energy policies, perhaps even expanded. His goals? Well, to make the US a global energy leader, reducing energy costs and boosting exports, thereby challenging OPEC's influence on oil prices. If this vision is actually realized, it could lead to some significant changes, potentially lower energy prices in America and some part of the world. And it's also going to lead to an increase in US exports to other nations and a shift in the global power dynamics. It's a scenario that could actually impact everything from fuel to international relations. But what does that actually mean for the global energy market? And could the world see a new balance of energy power? Well, let me know what you think. Should the US take a stronger role in the global energy production? Share your thoughts in the comments. Let's discuss what this presidency might mean for the future of energy worldwide. Now, let's imagine a future with Trump back in office. And one of the first big moves is to expand oil drilling in the US. He wants to make the most of US oil reserve, which he often refers to as liquid gold. But what does that mean for the country and the rest of the world? Well, in this scenario, Trump would likely open up more federal lands for drilling, places that have already been restricted before. And according to the US Department of Interior, around 640 million acres of federal land exist in the US, which means a lot of untapped potential for oil and gas. So more drilling could create thousands of new jobs, from engineers to construction workers to drivers who actually transport the oil. Some report actually estimate that oil and gas jobs can pay an average of $90,000 a year, which would mean great news for American workers and their families. Plus, with oil being produced at home, energy prices in the US could go down. When there is more supply of oil, things like gases for car or heating for home would get cheaper. The International Energy Agency has shown that increase in supply often reduces overall energy costs, meaning more money stays in people's pockets. But here's the flip side. Drilling on federal land and pushing for more oil production also raises environmental concerns. Drilling can disrupt natural habitats, lead to spillage, increase pollution. So environmental groups like the Natural Resource Defense Council points out that the more the Americans rely on fossil fuel, the harder it becomes to fight climate change. This is where the debate gets intense. On one side, there's an economic growth that can come into tapping into liquid gold, creating jobs and lowering energy prices. Why? On the other hand, there are concerns about the impact of environment and the push to switch to cleaner energy like wind and solar. So, what's more important here? The economic benefit from oil drilling or protecting the environment? Well, let me know your comments. Now, let's talk about what happens around the world if the US start producing a lot more oil. If Trump's energy plan takes off and America start pumping out oil more than ever, it could cause a big change in the global oil market. So here's how it works, man. When there is more oil being produced, the global supply goes up. And when there's a lot of supply, prices drop. Basic economics. Well, this could mean cheaper gas prices, not only in the US actually, but around the world. So lower oil prices can impact everything from what people pay at the pump to what they actually spend in heating their home or even buying groceries. For the US, more oil production means less need to buy oil from other countries. Trump's goal is for Americans to be energy independent, so it doesn't rely on other countries in the Middle East or places like Russia to meet its energy needs. So right now, the US still imports some oil, but more domestic production could mean that they have more control over energy supply right at home. And in fact, back in 2019, the US became a net exporter of petroleum for the first time in over 70 years, largely due to increased production. So you ask, what does this mean for the rest of the world? Well, if the US produces more oil, it could weaken the influence of OPEC, the group of oil producing countries that work together to control the prices of oil. For years, OPEC has set the production limits to keep oil prices stable. But if the US adds a lot of oil to the market, well, the OPEC's power to control prices could decrease. So, in this scenario, the US is going to be in a very strong position producing more of its own energy, possibly even exporting it to other countries. It could also help reduce dependence on oil from OPEC countries and create a new balance of power in the energy world. Now, let's talk about OPEC and what might happen if the US ramps up oil production. OPEC stands for the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. They're a group of 13 oil-producing countries that work together to manage the prices of oil worldwide. You can refer to them as a cartel. So, what would OPEC do if the US suddenly start producing a lot more oil? Well, OPEC usually control oil prices by deciding on how much oil its members produce. So, if there is too much of oil in the market, prices drop. So, to keep prices steady, OPEC might cut back on its own oil production. But with the US flooding the market, even that could get a bit tricky. But here is another possibility. OPEC could try to compete by keeping production high, which would create a price war. A price war happens when two groups like the United States and OPEC keep producing a lot of oil to gain market share, even if it means that prices stay low. Well, this has happened before, like in 2014 when Saudi Arabia chose not to cut production and oil prices dropped significantly. Now, if a price war happens, it could cause tension between the United States and some of the biggest OPEC countries, especially those that rely heavily on oil export for the economy, like, you guessed it, Saudi Arabia and Russia. For these countries, low oil prices could mean less money coming in, which could hurt the economy. Russia, for example, depends on oil and gas for about 40% of its national budget. If the US pumps more oil into the economy, it could impact Russia's economy, possibly straining the relationship between US and Russia even more. This whole situation could lead to geopolitical tension, which It's a fancy way of saying disagreement and conflict between countries over resources and power. So if the US increases oil production and competes with OPEC, it could shake things up in global politics. Now, let's talk about how Trump's focus on oil could actually impact renewable energy sources like wind and solar power, both in the US and around the world. If the US puts more effort into drilling for oil, it could mean less investment into renewable energies. With the government focusing on oil and gas, renewable projects might not get the same level of funding or policy support. However, if the government prioritizes fossil fuel, renewable might still grow. There is a strong demand from consumers and companies for clean energy, and technology in renewables is improving every year. In fact, reports from the International Energy Agency says that renewables are becoming the cheapest source of powers in many regions. So, even if Trump's policies favor oil, market forces and consumer choices could still keep renewables in demand. Companies around the world like Google, Amazon, Apple have made commitment to use only renewable energy, and major automakers like Tesla, General Motors, Ford are constantly increasing the production of electric cars, which means more need for clean energy. It's possible that renewables could actually slow down a bit under a strong oil policy, but it may not stop the progress entirely. The world is increasingly shifting to a cleaner energy source, and as technology improves, renewables are expected to play an even bigger role in the energy mix. Now, let's talk about how Trump's focus on oil production could affect consumers in the US. If America wraps up oil production, it could lead to more oil available in the market, which means lower prices for gas and heating. This could be a big win for the US household because it keeps energy costs down. When gas prices go down, people save more money every time they fill up their car. Lower heating costs can make a big difference too, especially in cold areas where significantly heating bills can get so high. And according to the US Energy Information Administration, energy costs for heating and transportation are some of the major expenses for most families. So lower prices could mean even more money left in people's pockets. But there are some potential downsides too. You see, when oil prices drop, it can lead to volatility, meaning price can go up and down unpredictably, and this can make it harder for people to budget for energy costs, and it also affects the global economy. When oil prices are low, countries that depend heavily on oil exports like Russia and Venezuela can experience economic turbulence. This can lead to political and economic instability around the world, which would even impact everyone, the US included. So, while low prices can be great for consumers, it's a double-edged sword. Price volatility and global economic impact are things to watch out for as they lead to shifts in markets and prices that affect everyone. So, how important is stable pricing to you? Would you prefer lower prices even if they're unstable, or more predictable costs even if they're a bit higher? Well, let me know in the comments. Now, let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture. What would Trump's presidency actually mean for global climate agreements and international energy policies? The US actually plays a major and critical role in the global climate actions. See, back in 2017, during Trump's first term, the United States actually withdrew from the Paris Climate Agreement, a global pact to fight climate changes by reducing carbon emission. Trump argued that it was unfair to the US and hurt its economy while letting other countries like China and India benefit. If Trump continues his focus on oil and fossil fuel, the US might once again prioritize energy independence over global climate crisis. So this could slow down international effort to combat climate changes, especially since the US is one of the largest emitters of carbon dioxide. But this also raises some big questions about international relations, because countries that are heavily invested in renewables or climate action, like those in Europe, might clash with the US over its policies. This could strain relationships with allies who view climate action as a top priority. On the flip side, some nations, particularly those that rely on oil exports like Saudi Arabia, Russia, they might actually welcome Trump's policy, because a focus on fossil fuel could strengthen ties with these countries, creating a new kind of energy alliance. So Trump could, reshape the US role in global energy and climate discussion. Whether it's stepping away from client agreements or forging new partnership with oil-rich nations, the impact could be felt far beyond American borders. Now, it's your turn. How do you think Trump's energy policies might affect people's lives? Could they be good for jobs and prices, or are there risks to the environment and relationship with other countries? If you are interested in seeing how these policies connect to other bigger issues like the rising value of gold and the growing tension between the US and China, make sure you check out the recent video on that, because it's coming up right now.